Hi there everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on some fun stuff. This is my Valkyrie from my Imperial Navy, and because I want to tie my campaigns and kind of the models together and all that, I'm going to be painting my new Aeronautica Imperialis, the Marauder bomber, and of course our Thunderbolt fighters. I'm going to paint them in a very similar scheme so that it kind of matches and we can do maybe coordinating campaigns or something along those lines, but I figured it'd be kind of a neat kind of look and feel, and it is a paint scheme that's going to translate down very well to that smaller scale. So super stoked about getting these done. I'm going to paint up, I'm going to prime up my two Marauder bombers and my two Thunderbolt fighters, and we'll be right back. Alright, so I've got all of my four bombers and fighters, my two bombers, my two fighters here. I've got them all done up in CORAX white, and I'm going to now use my base coat, which is going to be RAKARTH flesh, and I'm really liking the idea of having this RAKARTH flesh here. Again, it does match my Imperial Navy colors, but one of the things that I'm really enjoying about it is it's a little bit warmer than, say, any of the kind of tints on the khaki or brown, like the CORAX stone or the ALTDORF gray or whatever. So what I'm going to do with this guy here is I'm just going to go over kind of all of the pieces, and I'll go with a super light coat here. Okay, and I'll make sure that I'm getting good coverage, but I'm not really filling in too much of that detail there. So super light with your coats, a little bit of water added to your paint will make a world of difference. Smooth it out on a palette and then get it all over. So I'll even do the canopy framing here, and I'll just keep working my way through. So we've got the nice base coat of that RAKARTH flesh all the way through. Now you'll notice it's not perfect, it's a little inconsistent here and there, but don't forget we're going to be washing this and then going back over and kind of over brushing and all that. So we will catch those little bits as we kind of go along, but you just want to get the baseline color down. The intention here is to do the rockets, the missiles, and the bombs, and have them all done up in their colors. But you know what? Like I said, we can keep coming back. We can keep kind of iterating through as we go. My next focus here is going to be on the cockpits. Basically anything with a canopy, like the turrets or the cockpits. The ball turrets or anything like that, and I'm going to go with the blue. Again, I kind of want it to match my I'll bring him down here. I kind of want it to match my Imperial Navy guy, so his kind of glass on the visor there, I'm just going to duplicate that, and it's nice to have just a little bit of the blue. Kind of goes really well with that you know, with that kind of paler kind of fleshy color. So I'm going to make sure that I have not too much on my brush. I'll give it a little twist on my palette. And then all I'm going to do here is I'm going to start in the center and just kind of push towards the edges. And this is a much easier way to do those panels as opposed to just trying to do those individual, you know, those kind of struts, those girders up there on their own. So I'm just going to take my time. I'm going to work my way through. And it might need a second little coat there. Again, we are going to be washing this and kind of coming back, but just take your time. Make sure your paint's nice and thin, and then just kind of work your way through going into those corners there. Alright, well, it's coming together now. We've got the cockpits all kind of filled in. You'll see that I've got some stuff that's pretty messy. There's some tricky spots to get into on some of those, on some of the ball turrets there. But, like I said, we're just going to continue along and continue to refine. It's not a perfect process anyway. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working on the metallics. And for me, the metallics are going to be kind of a few tricky things. Now, the way I've set this up, because I guess variety is king here, is that I'm going to go through and I'm going to use LEADBELCHER now, and make sure again your paints are kind of thin-ish, and we're going to work our way through all the different pieces. So part number one, I'm going to work inside the turbines here with LEADBELCHER. Make sure you don't get too much built up. Okay, I'll just ring that through in like a circular motion here. Then on the Thunderbolts, I'll make sure that I get this piping in here, kind of working my way out to the edge so that I'm not going over that paint. And again, because we're dealing with such a heavy base paint, that RAKARTH flesh really does do a great job of kind of covering back over if I go over too much. Next up will be these engines at the back. So I'll leave as much of that original RAKARTH as I can intact. Okay. I'll go through here. I'll get those engine pieces in. Like that. Now the Thunderbolts have this extra engine piece at the back here. So I'll make sure I get that. Until my paint's a little too thin there. So I can always extra coat it if I need to. Okay, because now I've built the different variations. I've got the las cannon here, so I'm just going to do the barrels of the las cannons just up here like this. All right, and again, the wash is going to do the work for the rest of the model. And for the auto cannons here, I'll just make sure I go in and get that barrel, maybe the back of the barrel as well for those auto cannons. Now, for the Thunderbolts, we've got our Gatling, our Punishers in here. I'll just make sure I get all where those rotating cyclic barrels are, still leaving those bands in place for the Punishers there. And there's two reasons for that. One, it gives you a little bit of visual interest and your eye can see it, as opposed to having it all be straight up, just one color. But you'll see here that these weren't that great of a fit, and I had a bit of troubles getting those in. That'll also help break up that line, that seam line there, much better. Now the Marauders are going to have a similar type thing. We'll do the engines. The intakes, depending on how crafty you are, you might want to get in there. But I'll do the inside of the intakes here. And again, if I bone this up, I can always come back in with that RAKARTH there. I'll do the inside of the engines. There's the vents off the fuselage. Again, a little tricky to get into. A little messy here, but I can always come back in and over, just kind of go back over that one spot again. On the back part, the aft part of the engine here, I'll get all these little kind of stick outs, these little cooling pipes there to let all the exhaust out. We'll get those. And because I still want to echo the cabling that we have on the Thunderbolts, what I'm going to do is I'll make sure that I've got a little bit of cabling here. Just that little line of cabling that comes off here. Most of those little cabling details I'm actually going to leave because we're kind of zoomed out a lot on that scale. But for these exhausts, these little bits of cabling, just so that I mirror what's going on with the Thunderbolts, I'll put that in there as well. When it comes to the weapons, obviously we've got the las cannon frontal mounts here. But what I'm going to do is the heavy bolters that we see here. My heavy bolters, I got that bar across the top, so I'll just literally touch the top with some paint, and then I'll do the barrels of the heavy bolters. If you're super steady-handed, we can try and get that little skull on the side. And then just to add a little bit of visual variety, there's a casing that sits right in here. I'm going to do that in the LEADBELCHER as well. And I think that should just break that up just a little bit. Now again, normally I'd go in and I'd do all the latches and pick off all the individual pieces, and I think I could, but I think the scale is as such that I won't really need to worry about that. I think that is something that would be typically painted. Even trying to sneak in here under that big landing skid, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be at the bottom of the model. Not a lot's going to be seen here. But in addition to the engines, maybe we'll do these little bit of piping here. Again, kind of really echoing what's going on with those Thunderbolts. All right, so I'm going to go through, I'll pick out some of the details. Those are, of course, the major ones. I'll get all the venting done inside all the engines, make sure the weapon mounts and the weapons are all done. All of the ball turret mounts, those little bits extra. This one's fine, I think, here, but just those turrets mounts in the back. But yeah, I think I'm going to keep it super simple. Again, because of the scale, we can really just up and get away with that. So yeah, I'll continue on with that, and then we'll come right back. All right, so we got the metallics in there. Went around, just made sure I got all the little bits and bobs. I did a little bit of extra work on the engines down below. But again, I'm going to leave the bombs kind of that same initial color there. Now, the nice thing again about the scale is that we can get all kinds of extra detail in here, so we don't have to throw a lot of trims or like super fine details. We don't want to muddy up the model. There's lots of detail on there, and our wash is going to bring out a big chunk of that remainder. So you can see the paint job obviously isn't perfect, but because we're going to be washing and then coming back in over top again, I don't think we're going to have much in the way of issues there. So next up, I'm going to use Flash GITZ Yellow, and we're going to work a little bit on our trim, just to add a little bit of visual personality and add loads of contrast while we're on the game table there. So the plan is I've looked at this here. I want to use the yellow, and you can see, just to compare, the panels. I want to make sure that the panels are wide enough that I can fit the numbers if it's a 2-digit number on there. So I think for the Thunderbolts, I'm going to do just this third over here, and I'll do the tail fin there. And then on the Marauders, again, I'll do that side piece right here. And then instead of doing the tail fin, I think I might just do like a band of yellow on the top of the tail fin there, and then that will leave room for this kind of thinner iconography there. Or if I wanted to put some of this larger iconography, I could put it up top as well. So let's give her a go here. I'm going to grab my Flash GITZ Yellow, and again, I'm just going to stick to the lines that are essentially on the the planes themselves. And you know, make sure this is nice and thin as we go through. And I'll just start with this band here, and I'll make sure that I'm sticking with that, just that one line that's right there. So don't be shy, do the multiple thin coats. We are going to wash over top of this. And if I mess up a little bit and go over, I can always come back in with that original color. Now I want to make sure that I'm not filling in any of that detail if I can help it. So I'll do the Flash GITZ Yellow on that corner piece, or that edge piece, I guess. And then on the tail section of the Thunderbolt, I'll do basically this whole piece up here in that yellow there. Okay, now that should give us a whole bunch of personality there. And if you get a little heavy, you can always use your brush and just kind of wick away with a bit of water here. And I think the thin coats is going to be the important part on this process. Alright, that being said, let's move off, set that aside, and we'll look at our bomber here. Now the bomber, oh, and I'll do that, I'll match it underneath as well. So with the bomber, again, just kind of looking at that band, what I'll do is I'll do the yellow here on the inside of that kind of defined line there. Okay. And again, I'll go all the way around to the underneath, the underside. And then up top, on that upper tail section, I'll do it up there as well. I think the bombers are more of a, less of a, you know, kind of a, the tail fin is kind of less of a feature than having that visually up here. So I will go through and do these up in yellow. Now to kind of finish this outer trim, I'm going to use ABADDON black, and I'm just going to use that to just add just one more kind of little bit of depth. Again, I don't want to overdo it. I think it'd be very easy to have too much going on with these bombers and fighters. But with the bombers, I'm just going to do this one fin, or this one kind of line right here. Super steady hands. I may be coming back with that other color there. And I can always come back with the yellow over the black. Now, it might be a little tricky, but I'll come back with that RAKARTH flesh over top. Right, so that'll give me just a kind of a cool looking line there. And on the fighters, I'll leave them all by themselves there. But what I will do is I'll add just a touch of black to that front piece up here. So I'll just make sure that I'm getting that one, just kind of cowling up at the front. I'll make sure I get that all in black, and I'll leave that little bit of a recess there in the RAKARTH flesh. And you see I've already slopped all over, being reckless here. I've already slopped all over my las cannon, but I'll wipe a bit off with some water, and then I'll just reapply that RAKARTH flesh again. Alright, so we got all our major kind of trim colors down, which is great. Got a little bit of black, a little bit of yellow, just to offer some high contrast to these things. And then, of course, we got the normal kind of, that kind of muted paint scheme. So I'm really liking the way that's come together. So the next step now is to give it a wash. Now this is going to bring out all of our details in here. We're going to kind of, you know, tamp down some of these bright colors. I mean, they're really... the yellow is really bright here, so we want to kind of tamp it down or dirty it up a little bit. And I'm going to use a wash here. So this is a kind of a homebrew wash. It's 50% floor wax, funny enough. And then, so what that does is that kind of dilutes things out a little bit, but it's a mix of 25% Agrax Earthshade, 25% Nuln Oil, and then 50% floor wax. And that just kind of acts as a bit of a flow aid for our fighters and bombers and all that. I'll just clear these guys off. And all I'm going to do now is you can see immediately it's going to start pulling out some of that detail that's in there. Now I'm getting a lot of pooling, and that's something I definitely don't want. I got a pretty large brush with lots of wash in it. So I'm just going to make sure that I just kind of work it through as I go along. Now it will start to settle almost right away. And if you don't want big puddles of it on some main areas, you can start to use your kind of half-emptied brush now, and you can you know, just kind of sop up that little bit of extra wash that's in there. But you can just go in and work it into all the nooks and crannies, all the cracks, and obviously this is going to give us that shade and perspective. And again, just be careful of some of the pooling that's going to occur there. You want the details to all pop out, but again, immediately you can see, even before it's dried, you can see that it's pulling out a load of that detail now. And like I said, I'll just work my way through both the fighters and the bombers. Alright, we can see now with that wash that it's really kind of brought back a lot of that detail, like a ton of that detail. And you can see that it's also really tamped down that yellow. Now, you could pretty much play with these guys as is, throw them on the bases and fly them around. You know, it's got that nice kind of rugged, dirty, you know, well-weathered kind of look and feel to them. But what I want to do with this now is I want to make sure that, you know, I kind of bring back some of that detail that I might have lost with the wash. See that there's some inconsistencies here where it's pooled a little bit. And of course, there's loads of detail on here. And again, where it's pooled, and it just happens. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the old school dry brushing, and I'm going to use like a medium dry brush here. Something that I can really kind of get in there without affecting some of the metallics that I've already done. And I'm going to go back in with our RAKARTH flesh here. And I've got a tissue set aside because what I want to do with this dry brushing is I just want to make sure that I've got, well, that I've got just kind of a little bit of paint, and I'm going to use my tissue to do that. So I'm not going to go straight down to a typical dry brush where there's nothing left on the brush. But what I am going to do is just make sure that I got a little bit of paint off there. And grabbing my my plane here, wherever possible, I'll go front to back like this. And the idea here is to bring back in a little bit of that kind of streakiness. And I'm not there to kind of do the whole wing. I'm just here to recover that detail and go back up and down. So nice kind of linear pattern here for the dry brush. And I'm just going to restore that detail, and I want to make sure that I don't plug up any of these holes. I can always come back in and kind of pin wash it, coming back in with a little bit of that wash there, and that would work just fine if I go over too much in detail. But for the most part, I'm just going to restore as much of that detail as I can. When it comes to the panels up here, I mean, you can build up as much as you want. Just start really small. It's very tough. Like, clearly we can't take away the dry brushing, but we can always go back in and do more. So I'm going to continue on here. I'll make sure I get my my bombers and my fighters all done. Just make sure you're being careful here to avoid areas such as these little exhaust pipes that we've got here, and you know, kind of the cable work on there. And the nice thing is, because it was, you know, it's kind of play ready-ish now, you're just kind of adding accent and highlight and levels back. So I'll continue on dry brushing with this, and then we'll come back and do the yellow. All right, getting closer, kind of home stretching it here. Next up, I'm going to dry brush with the Flash GITZ yellow, just for all my yellow. Now, I love that tamped down yellow, but it's just a little it's a little kind of pooly. It looks like I got some wash definitely in there. So I'm just going to use my Flash GITZ yellow here. Again, just a very simple kind of dry brush. On this one, I'm going to go crazy light on. Whereas with the other one, I wanted to, you know, just kind of build up a bit of that color back. With the yellow, I'm okay with the general kind of look of the yellow for the most part. But I'm just going to go in and, again, maintaining that streaky top to bottom, I'm just going to restore a bit of that color in. And if it looks like it's you've missed some spots, like you can see, I'm definitely not filling back those blotchy bits there that were pooled. Then that's okay. I'll just give it a minute. I'll let it kind of tamp down and dry, and I'll come back. But I'm looking for this kind of dirty kind of worn yellow. It's a lot nicer than just having like a plain bright yellow for sure. I get to see all the detail in the wings there. But I just want to get just a little bit of color back in, just a little bit of vibrance in there. But I still want it kind of muddied and dirtied. There you can see I just let it sit for a second, and now I'm getting that color back. So nice kind of weathered yellow. Okay, so I'm really happy with the way things are coming together now. I like that nice kind of streaky look that we got from the dry brushing. If you need to do a little bit of extra brush work, maybe around the engine cowlings or whatever, that's really good. Just obviously, you want to make sure that you preserve that kind of silver that you've got going on there. So you can always come in and dry brush, and do some regular kind of streaky brush work to kind of finish it up. In addition to that, of course, you can also come in and kind of pin wash in if you get into the details for whatever reason. So moving on to the canopies now. It's actually going to be a pretty straightforward kind of approach. I'm going to start off with my ALTDORF Guard Blue. Just make sure you don't have not a lot of paint on your brush here. And what I'm going to do is just not at the edges, but just kind of in that open space in the center. Just kind of go in and get that middle. So I want to keep all that shading in the backdrop there. And that way you get that little bit of a nice kind of gradation. And obviously you won't be able to do this, or maybe you can, on the much smaller windows. You can do it on the front panels, but maybe not these little tiny guys in there. But we'll rebuild in that little bit of color, but still leaving that kind of... we'll still leave in the shading on the side. And then we'll take LOTHERN blue, and we'll apply a thin line of LOTHERN blue at either the top or... Make sure I don't have any paint on here. We'll either apply that thin line at the top, just a little bit. We'll just kind of rough that in. Again, still kind of leaving that edging there. And then we'll do it at the front. So if there's ever a choice, we'll do it at the kind of the leading edge or the top. So this front panel here, let's kind of put a little bit in at the top. And because I don't really have a top to this, it's more of a leading edge, I'll just do this at the front. And so that'll just be nice and consistent. No matter what we choose, we'll do that. Hey, maybe we'll do like a little bit of an edge in there. Okay, so again, this one here, I'll do the top and a little bit of the front there. Okay, so I'll work my way through and I'll get those all done up. But yeah, it'll look pretty nice in there. If this does end up getting a little bit thick, for whatever reason, and you want a bit of a thinner line, sometimes that's hard to achieve by actually drawing that thinner line or putting in that thinner line. So what I'll do is I'll do some subtractive highlighting. I'll go back with my base color, my ALTDORF Guard Blue here, and because it's so much easier to paint kind of in, I'll just repaint in a little bit, and you can get a much thinner line that way. I'll show you that one more time right here. See, it's kind of thick up there. So what I'll do is it's sometimes a lot easier to kind of subtract away that paint with a little bit up top. So now you get a much kind of thinner line there. All right, so I'll continue along with the canopies, and then after that, that'll pretty much bring us to a close. What I am going to do, however, let's grab my pen here, is I'm going to grab my MICRON pen, and if there's a few spots that you missed, you can either pin wash it, or what I'll do is I'll go in here and I'll just kind of find where those textures are, and I'll redefine that nice hard line that might have been dulled off a little bit with dry brushing. So you can see it's very easy to restore that in. Sometimes you'll lose detail around these little blocks here, and I can just go in with my MICRON pen here, Just tidy that up a little bit. We can do it for lines, but again, pin washing might be a little bit nicer. But we could, in fact, let's see if I can get in here. I could, in fact, do it for lines that are missing too. But pin washing might be a little bit faster than trying to set those up. I'll also use it wherever two colors meet. So if I want a clearly defined line, you'll see I've got this line that carries all the way up here. But if I want to carry that line forward, I can just kind of scratch that in there and give that nice characterful line between the kind of the main fuselage color and the yellow there. Finally, once these are dry, now I tend not to like to do this with my with paint that's still drying, but I can go into my canopies and I can just kind of re-blackline those canopies that way as well, and it just gives a nice definition to that canopy. So, all right, so I'm going to work my way around, finishing off the canopies. I'll make sure that I blackline anything with my Micron pen here. I'll blackline anything kind of between two textures or two lines. Again, you can see the flaps here. This is a nice spot maybe to kind of black line. So wherever two colors meet, or ever two kind of textures meet, I'll go in and I'll black line, and I'll just tidy up a few things on that front there. Again, the bottoms, they look really cool. It's nice to show them to your friends, but in reality on the table, this is going to live like this, and it's going to be stored like this on your shelf as well. So yeah, I'll get to it, and I'll probably throw the decals on. Yes, it's Canada, we say decals instead of decals. But I'll throw the decals on, and then we can maybe see what she looks like all finished. All right, so they are all decaled up. They've got the transfers on them. I've even gone in and done just kind of a little pin wash, and then I went in with my Micron pen there, and I just kind of, wherever there was a gap, I put those in. If you're wondering how to get those decals, the transfers directly on, so it looks like really, really solid, then what I'll do is in the right-hand corner up here, I will put in a link to the video on how I do them with the Vallejo decal system. So one of the things I want to take a look at now is just kind of how they turned out. Now again, because of the scale, we don't really have to pick out a ton of details. We can let the washes really do the trick for us. But I love these kind of gritty looking, kind of naval aviation type looks to them. I love the fact that you can see these guys totally deploying out of out of kind of a larger kind of guard drop ship, or any kind of the big transports, rolling off onto a runway and taking off. Love the details of the little heavy bolters and kind of all the weapon systems along the bottom, and I'm super impressed. Now, I do think the transfers really make the difference. I think they really kind of sell that smaller scale. I think that having those details in there, the numbering and the little bits of iconography and all that, I think that really kind of sells what's going on in here. Anyway, loving the look and feel of these. They're nice. They're kind of gritty, but they're bright color scheme, which they're not too muddy, which is really quite nice. And I love the fact that they support kind of my Imperial Navy dudes that I got kind of set up with walking Russes and all of that. So it builds a nice kind of narrative and a continuity between all the forces, and I think I'm just super impressed. And they feel awesome. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I have flown these guys around loads and loads around the office. So anyway, that's it for this one, guys. I really hope it was of value. This was a ton of fun to put together. These were a little bit of work, but oh man, did they ever come together crazy nicely, and I'm super looking forward to having them out on the field. So I want to say thanks a lot for watching. If you liked the video, jab that like button. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithms. If you want to kind of share thoughts on how it came together, throw those in the comments. Obviously, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well if you want any notifications of any of our future videos. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. Next video I'm going to be doing is going to be the bases, most likely, and I'll kind of work through those. They're going to take a little bit of work, obviously, with primer and all that, but we'll address that in video. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.